Hey, it's Sol, and this is the Guide to Engineering in Midnight. Here we'll cover just what sorts of madness we're dealing with this time, along with more mundane things like leveling up and specialization paths. Then we'll cover cooldown and mastery crafting along with a few builds, then highlight some cool things that engineering has to offer. This is an intermediate guide that assumes you've got some experience with professions over the past few years. Use the navigation to get you where you want to go. Please like this video, subscribe for more WoW coverage, and catch me where I'm live. A few things to point out, and you can skip this if you heard it before because I repeated it for every profession up till now. Consumable goods and reagents now only have 2 quality ranks. This matters a bit for gear crafters, but when it comes to things like ammo and recycling, yes, that's a thing, it's a pretty big deal that creates a distinction between what I call a cooldown crafter versus a master crafter of these items. And I should explain those terms too. A cooldown crafter doesn't use a single character who's like the best at their craft. They don't need to rely on high-level materials, tools, or knowledge points beyond what's needed to learn recipes. Instead, they just throw a bunch of alts at the problem, using multiple characters and the concentration resource to raise the quality of an item to the next highest rank. Because in Midnight, with only 2 ranks, max quality is just 1 step away. Virtually all professions can apply this philosophy to create crafting characters who basically use concentration to make max quality consumables and reagents when enough is available. Concentration, by the way, regenerates at 250 resource per day, so we're pretty much using concentration as a daily cooldown mechanic. As soon as engineers learn the recipes they want, which actually won't take very long, they can immediately spend their concentration to make top-tier reagents, albeit only a handful every few days, which is why one can scale up the operation with even more alts. A player with this philosophy sees their characters more or less as, tools, a means to an end, and so on, and will primarily do their business in the auction house. I'm speculating here, but I anticipate cooldown crafters to be pretty popular, as they don't even need high-quality materials to make top-quality goods. There might be a drawback though, as this could actually impact the supply of materials, which might narrow the price differences in quality. We should also consider the mid to long term of this kind of approach. What will the competition be like between single-player characters and those who might roll numerous alts slamming cooldowns? How many players will be using so many alts actually, and how will all this mix in with the region auction house? We'll have to wait and see. Master crafters though, they depend on building up levels and knowledge points to eventually mass-produce high-quality items and gear without restrictions, and this involves the steady progression, all the weekly grinding, and the activities involved. This approach also falls under the philosophy of wanting to be a completionist who has fully developed their character, and that's cool. This isn't about right or wrong gameplay, you can play the game however you like. I'm just trying to identify the distinction between cooldown crafting and master crafting, so you can come up with your own strategy without getting yourself too confused with what's needed to get there, because the approaches can be very different. All the familiar trappings have returned, from specializations to knowledge points and patron orders and concentration. A number of recipes are purchased with Artisan's Moxie, earned from skill ups, gaining knowledge, and fulfilling patron orders. Most recipes will be discovered, as I'll explain later, and you can mouse over the information box on the recipe to find out how you get it. Oh, and Moxie, by the way, it replaces Artisan's Acuity from the War Within. Moxie is also specific to a given profession, so unlike Dragonflight and the War Within, you won't be able to jump multiple professions to consolidate a whole bunch of Moxie and then dump that into a single profession. Quite a bit has changed with the start of engineering. Leveling isn't so bad, it's just different. As usual, engineers work with the likes of mining materials, but in this case they only work with copper and tin. There are no recipes that use silver or thorium. So it's a little goofy. We start off crafting these gears, and then immediately turn around and recycle these gears into new kinds of parts, this Evercore and Aetherloom, depending on what we recycle. It's kind of like milling and prospecting, only it's the engineer's own stuff, but we could also choose from a wide variety of reagents from all the other Midnight professions to recycle. From the feel of things so far, early in the expansion, we're best off recycling things that we make ourselves, turn them into materials, and then use these to progress our craft. There also doesn't seem to be a direct logic as to what turns into Evercore and what turns into Aetherloom, and I'll just provide a list here on screen. Just realize that things might change by the time this goes live. Recycling is important though. Not only does it give us needed materials, but we also randomly learn recipes while doing so. From testing, it doesn't seem to matter what we recycle or what quality it is either. Anything can unlock anything, with a few exceptions I'll point out later. Down the road though, we might be able to just buy materials we need depending on the kind of crafting approach we want to take, but you still want to do enough recycling to get all the recipes. It's not until around skill level 80 when leveling grinds to a halt, and our only sources of leveling include crafting epic tools. These tools are a cut above the rare quality versions, although they still provide the same skill bonus. These recipes need to be bought with Moxie, and they'll otherwise tick us all the way to 100. Tool-wise, for the first time, I think it'd be a good idea to have an ingenuity tool handy for recycling. Producing high-quality materials from recycling does have a use, but multicraft does not work with recycling. In my opinion, ingenuity is going to be more effective than resourcefulness in a situation where we have a lot of things that we want to recycle. So let's get to the specialization, starting with recycling. It feels like a good idea to max this out quick in order to produce more Evercore and Aetherloom. The amount produced is kind of random, but this at least raises the minimum and maximum yield. For the rest of the tree, it's a question of which stat you want to focus on depending on your crafting approach. Usually it's going to be multicraft. Bits and bots cover gadgets, stat modifiers, and optional reagents, which I'll cover later in the guide. This, along with gear, they're risky trees because not a lot of folks like using engineer crafted armor, as other pieces usually sim better. But speccing midway through the main trait unlocks even more recipes to unlock via recycling, and the bottom of the bits tree gives a chance of producing more materials while recycling. Market mobility is where the engineers tend to shine, as they produce a wide variety of profession tools, but this time around each profession tool is given its own specialization, so whoopee. When you specialize for the first time, you can choose a tool to start mastering right away, though it'll be quite the road learning all the remaining recipes. Finally, combat analytics, as I mentioned earlier, it's a risky tree to venture down due to demand. In Midnight, engineers can craft helmets, bracers, guns, and new to the scene, boots. The armor pieces can be slotted with special engineer reagents I mentioned earlier, and these do count as embellishments, and the customizable stats are singular, so you can pump hard into a particular stat if that's your fancy. While engineers can make guns, scribes can make bows, which makes for an interesting question. Which will players prefer? Which is going to be cheaper to make, and how many players will pick up these ranged weapon specializations? Now let's get to the builds. Engineering joins the ranks of jewel crafting and inscription in how it's kind of weird being able to effectively ignore quality up to a certain point. Since this is new for Midnight, I'll review. On their own, engineers pick up copper and tin to make gears and sprockets, and then recycle those into Evercore and Aetherblue, and then use those to create gear, ammo, stat modifiers, and bots. Cooldown crafters can ignore quality up to making the Evercore and Aetherloom to craft gear at maximum quality using a master crafter. With that in mind, having a bunch of recyclers pumping out Evercore and Aetherloom might not be a bad idea, or they can go straight to producing lots of ammo, although the audience for that is considerably smaller. At least the reagents are a lot more versatile. Especially early in the expansion, you want to ask yourself how much material you'll be able to supply to your alt army. Another decent starting route would be to make the most popular tools engineering has to offer. A fishing rod is a popular choice, though most of the time people just need one for their whole warband. Same goes for the mining accessory, where people want one, but it's usually just one. On the other hand, I have been suggesting an army of jewel crafters might be a good idea, so while it's a gamble, I would vote for a jewel crafting tool first. As for gear, engineers are in a sort of new situation being able to craft boots, which, like bracers, can be worn without needing to be an engineer. The question is if the single large stat bonus and the extra perks attaching bots to them, are they compelling choices compared to what gear will be made available throughout the expansion? The bots are short on the variety, but they appear useful, offering throughput and some utility. But engineering procs have been notoriously low on the throughput, so we'll have to wait and see how they perform live. In a lot of ways, it's going to be an uphill battle to climb, as engineer gear is only compatible with engineer embellishments. Now let's go over the cool things engineering can make, and like it or not, I'm going to repeat myself a bunch of times. They can make hunter-specific modifications and ammunition. I'm not sure how the mods compare to weapon enchants, but I imagine they should be pretty comparable. They can make boots of all armor types, and they're usable by non-engineers. With it comes a round of embellishments specific to the crafted gear. Other fun little things return, like a button to pause long-term buffs, wipe recovery, and the beloved wormhole, which takes you to a random location at Midnight Zones, come on. And finally, we have a round of decor which I admit looks a bit unusual. I had a somewhat different vision of engineering decor in Midnight, but my attention turns towards this void projector for some pretty cool dance party effects. And that's the guide. Please like this video, subscribe for more WoW coverage, catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.